Have you ever wondered how to stop feeling overwhelmed by everything you need to do? How to finally get organized and become highly productive? That's what we'll be talking about today. If you've ever wondered about this, and even if you haven't, you need to keep listening. Why is that, Russ?
Yes, because today we have David Allen, widely recognized as the world's leading authority on personal and organizational productivity, as well as a speaker and author of several best-selling books, including Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. Welcome, David. I'm so excited to have you with us today. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Russ. Alex, delighted to be here. My pleasure.
We have so many questions, and I know you have so much to tell us. So what started you, what motivated you to jump into the world of productivity?
You know, I've always been interested in how I could improve myself without having to work too hard at it. So I've always been fascinated by models that actually worked, that allowed me to get more done, have more fun, have more room, more space, more clarity, more freedom. So I've always been, fascinated by things like that. I needed help as my life was getting more complex, professionally, et cetera. Early on, I got turned on to the value of clear space. I've had a good bit of training in the martial arts. How do you clear your mind so that you can be fully present and available to fight four people in a dark alley, or then, of course, apply that to anything you wanted to do. And so I got intrigued by all of that, began to discover and explore and be trained in some of the techniques that actually made that happen. I didn't wake up one morning and have all of this. There were a little string of epiphanettes over the last 3 decades that sort of taught me that. But that's how I got into it. It was really mostly for myself, and then as I got into the consulting profession and coaching profession, I discovered that everybody around me needed the same kind of stuff. So I began to put all that together into a methodology, and then at some point, down the line, I realized, wow, I'd uncovered something that nobody else seemed to have uncovered, so I wrote the book.
Getting Things Done, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. But it took me 25 years, Russ, to figure out what I'd figured out. I thought everybody had sort of figured this out. I didn't really study time management or personal organization or any of that kind of stuff. This was really all street smarts that, I uncovered. And I had, some great mentors that taught me different pieces of this. And as I began to put it all together and started to find out, hey, the world is actually interested in this stuff. Most people called it something like time management, but you can't manage time. It really is about how do you manage yourself. And frankly, my stuff is really about how do you get clear space.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, most people today don't have clear minds and, desperately want that, and that you combined martial arts with your inspirations to bring it to everyday life.
Yeah, I don't know how long I'm going to be preaching this, Alex, but, most people are still using their head as their office, and your head's a terrible office. It's a crappy office. your head's designed for having ideas, but not for holding on to them. It didn't evolve to do that. And most people are so concerned about feeling overwhelmed and their mind is so cluttered up. And I say, yeah, no kidding. So get the stuff out of your mind. And, it's a simple idea, but boy, that's a big habit for people to change.
Well, David, the heartbeat of getting things done, those 5 simple steps that apply order to chaos, it changed the first capture. And I would like you to go over the 5 steps if you could, but the capture just changed my life. Just that one piece. So if you could go into that, it's world shattering as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Well, everybody listening to this at some point has felt overwhelmed or confused and sat down and made a list and felt more in control and more focused, without exception. And if you reverse engineered how that happened, nothing changed in your world. Nothing changed in your world, and yet you're feeling more in control and more focused, which are the core elements of self-management, control and focus. And so you did something that changed that for yourself without the world changing. What'd you do? You wrote it down. You got it out of your head. If you reverse engineered that, you'd never keep anything in your head the rest of your life. And I don't. So in a way, it's that simple an idea. And, you'll sleep better if you keep pen and paper by your bed. So yeah, just that first step. And it's a critical step because if you don't capture things that have your attention, you're not writing everything down. Come on, you have 50,000 thoughts a day. But you should be writing anything down that creates some sort of open loop or some sort of commitment that you can't finish at the moment you think about it. Oh, I need dog food. Or, oh, I need to call the bank. Or, oh, yeah, I ought to do this. Or, wow, I would be cool. Oh, that's a great restaurant I ought to keep track of. So that's the kind of stuff, little or big, that if you don't actually externalize that, it starts to roll around in your head like a loose pinball. But if you only had 3 or 4, that's one thing. Most people have 1,000.
Yes. I can't keep track of, I don't want to keep track of it in my head anymore because of this system that you've developed. And I've been following you for years. That's why this interview took place. And I think you're brilliant. Could you go into the second step of clarify?
Sure. If you just capture, and a lot of people do that, and it does improve their lives for sure, as you mentioned, Russ, but if you leave it there, then you might potentially become just a potential list manager, and then you'll have lists stuck all over God and creation. You'll have Post-it stuck on your computer screens. You'll have, lists just everywhere. So you actually have to move to the next stage, which is, it's kind of the opposite. You need to write all the stuff down, get it all out of your head, and then you need to empty that list or the in basket or the in tray or whatever, wherever you captured all of this stuff. You need to get it empty, not to finish what's in there, but you need to move to the next step. Actually, the next two, which are very close together, which is to clarify and organize. So if I wrote down mom, why did I write that on a list? Well, it's a birthday coming up. Well, great. What are you going to do about it? Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do about it. That's right. Well, you need to move to the next step called, well, what are you going to do about mom and her birthday? And that's where you need to move to the clarify step. Once you capture things that have your attention, then you need to ask yourself, well, why does this have my attention? And what do I need to do to resolve it, finish it? What do I need to do to get this off my mind? And there's, critical elements there. The first critical element is, look, is this something you're going to move on or not? Yes or no? And if yes, 2 very important things you need to answer. What's the very next action on it? And if one action won't finish whatever I'm committed to do, what's the project? So that's the clarify step, which you need to do with every email you get, every piece of physical mail you get, every note that you take from meetings, every idea you wake up with in the morning. You need to say, quite frankly, just say, well, great, what's the next action on this? Is there an action? And if so, what is it? And that will get you started. So
now,
that's the next step, a very important one.
Do you recommend prioritizing at this point?
No.
Okay.
You can't prioritize until you have all the data.
Mm-hmm.
How can you decide which phone call you need to make if you haven't even decided what are all the calls you need to make? So,
right.
You need to clarify all the stuff that's got your attention. That's what's a little counterintuitive about this, is that you need to pay as much attention to I need dog food as you do to I need a life.
Right.
Strangely enough, because if you don't handle I need a dog food, it will undermine your ability to focus on what kind of life you want to have. So the funny thing is you actually need to put just as much rigor and intelligence and, you need to pay as much attention to the things that have your attention that are not the most critical or strategic, because if there's still things you still need to handle, if you don't deal with them this way, they will start to then undermine your ability to focus on the meaningful stuff appropriately.
That's great stuff.
You need to be, and if the funny thing is the part of your psyche that keeps hanging on to this stuff, if you don't externalize it, puts about as much energy on I need dog food as I need a life.
Well, David,
you'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking of either one.
If you could hold that thought and continue the heartbeat of GTD. If you just tuned in, you're listening to Russ on the radio, 1100 KFNX. Coming up, our guest David Allen, the godfather of productivity. You'll receive David's advice as well as one of his best-selling books. Welcome back to Russ on the Radio. Glad to have you with us. I'm Russ Stevenson, your host, along with Alex Stevens. Hey, Alex.
Hey, thanks for being here, everybody.
On 1100 KFNX, we are fortunate to have David Allen with us today, who created a method that applies order to chaos. David, how are you?
I'm terrific. Thanks, Russ. Alex, lovely to be here again.
Absolutely. You are continuing to speak about your 5 steps. We talked about clarify, and then we were about to speak about the organize. So can you touch on that?
Yeah. Well, the whole idea is to grab what has your attention and to make it more objective. If you don't pay appropriate attention to what has your attention, it'll take more attention than it deserves. So we're talking about a process about how do you clear your head. The first thing you do is you get it out of your head. That's the capture step. Then you need to clarify specifically what it means and what you're going to do about it, if anything. That's the clarify step. Then, once you've decided what you're going to do about it, if you don't finish the thing in that very moment, which is possible, especially the 2-minute stuff, and you think you can do it 2 minutes, and you think you should do right then. But if it's something that you can't finish in the moment but still need to, it's a phone call you need to make, but you can't make it that minute. It's something you need to buy at the store, but you can't run to the store right then. That's then where you need to organize reminders of those things in appropriate places so that your brain can let go of the remembering and reminding job. Mm-hmm. So that's building a trusted system, and that's the organized piece. I need to park this stuff somewhere where I'll see it at the right time. Anybody who keeps it posted on their refrigerator to keep track of the food they need to buy is doing exactly that. Hey, here's food I need. I only need that when I'm about to go to the store or go to the market, and therefore here's where I parked a reminder of that. That's the organized step.
What do you suggest people use at that point? A journal, a calendar?
The actions you need to take. I mean, there's several things that you need to keep track of. Probably the most critical are the next actions you need to take and the outcomes and the projects that you need to keep track of until they're finished. So the actions you need to take go in two places. They need to either go on your calendar. If it's something you have to do on Wednesday, that your calendar is the place for that. If it's something to do just as soon as you can in and around the stuff that's on your calendar, that you just need to put on some kind of a list of just actions you need to take. Now, because most people have a lot of those things, it's kind of nice to sort and organize those in a way that makes sense. In other words, most people, in my experience, have over 150 next actions on all the stuff they're committed to do. Mm-hmm. Stuff they need to buy at the store, stuff they need to talk to their boss about, stuff they need to, do at the computer. And so it's kind of nice to start to organize those. Nice to put all your calls on a list of calls to make. Nice to put all your errands on a list of errands you need to do. So it's just common sense. Once you've got a lot of those, it's kind of nice to have lists. Ultimately, you just need lists. And you just need to have the right things on the list once you've made the clarify step. But then, all you need is just some sort of a list manager. And how many lists you have depends on how complex your life is.
Right.
With a very simple life, I mean, a calendar and a list of next actions to do in and around them might be sufficient. If you're the head of technology for a major Wall Street firm, you're probably going to need a list of all of your projects, a list of all of the things to talk to, 30 people that report to you. You might have quite a number of lists. It's the same principle, however. So that it's really, in a sense, a fairly simple thing. Build a trusted system to park stuff you can't finish now.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And then you have your open, clear mind so that you can create or...
Yeah. You use clarity for whatever you want. I mean, I got a 24-year-old rock musician, the champion of my stuff. He uses clarity to finish more songs, to get more creative song, and I did. We got a 53-year-old CEO that uses clarity and space to think more strategically about a merger that they're considering. So they both need space for very different reasons, and the way they're going to get that space is, believe it or not, the same methodology. I don't change anything I say, no matter who I talk to. Everybody has to deal with the same thing to get space. What you do with it is very unique to you.
Mm-hmm. And that's magnificent because everybody can use it no matter where they are in society or in their lives to make their life better, to create more in their life, to have time and mind to do that.
Not only that, Alex, everybody's life is going to change. Believe me, GTD and this methodology will be tested in the major transition points in your life. You get married, you get divorced, you get kids, your kids go away, you get a life-threatening illness, you move, you get promoted, you get fired. All of those things are the times when you need these skills to be able to get clear when that change is thrown at you. And that's really where my methodology comes to the fore. But you don't want to wait for those kind of transition points before you suddenly realize I should have learned how to do that. Right. So it's really nice to be able to get this under your belt so that you're ready for the change and surprises that are coming.
Well, the world thanks you for that.
For sure. And that's where the reflection and engagement occur. Is that right, David?
Yeah. The stage 4 and stage 5 is, once you've captured, clarified, and organized your stuff, you then need to engage with where you've parked all of it. You've created essentially what the cognitive scientists are now calling an external mind. You have to have an external mind now. Your mind cannot handle all of the complexity of your life. So you must build this smart and trusted externalized version of all the stuff you need to be reminded about. But then in order to trust it, you need to trust that you're engaging with it. It's one thing to have your calendar filled out appropriately. It's another thing to not look at your calendar and forget your stuff. Come on. You need to make sure that you're then engaging with this externalized material appropriately. And that's where the stage 4 reflect. I need to step back and now look at the 15 phone calls I need to make, the 5 things I need to talk to my life partner about. I need to step back and look at the 35 or 92 projects I have on some consistent basis to make sure that I'm not just being driven by latest and loudest, but I'm managing the forest instead of hugging the tree. And that kind of reflection modality is what this kind of a system, this systematic process really allows you to do as long as you do that. But that's a separate behavior than the first 3. You need to capture, clarify, and organize, but then you need to make sure that your mind then is involved with this to be able to shut your mind up. It's a strange paradox, but you have to use your mind to shut your head up.
Yeah. Would you consider that a habit that needs to be discipline that needs to be learned, or does it happen fairly quickly?
Sorry, guys, I hate the word discipline. It sounds like hard work. Change the word direction every time you hear discipline, I need more discipline, just change the word direction. Yes, I understand what you mean by discipline. Yes, it does. And building in reflection time is one of the most needed habits, for anybody out there who's got a complex life. And most people are just getting wrapped around the axle and being driven by latest and loudest because they haven't built in the time to step back. And I don't mean, walk around the rose garden, stare at your navel, and figure out your life purpose. That's a good reflection, too. But I'm talking about stepping back and looking at the life you're living in the down in the weeds and pulling back out of the weeds and going, okay, wait a minute. Now, what am I doing about tires on the car and getting a new babysitter and extending my credit at the bank and being able to build in that kind of operational review? That's probably the biggest habit that's needed and the one that's the most lacking right now, certainly in the professional world, but that includes stay-at-home dads and anybody out there who's got a complex life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this information is so critical. Can you just take a minute, David, and tell our audience how to contact you in case they want additional information, books, CDs?
Sure. GettingThingsDone.com website, lots of stuff on there. So that gives you lots of fun rabbit trails to go down if you want to look in various ways to play with this information. And we've got a great staff. We've got a great, program set of materials that people can dive into this at whatever level that seems appropriate for people to do. If anybody wants to contact me directly, I'm David, D-A-V-I-D, at davidco.com, D-A-V-I-D-C-O.com.
Oh, that's great. We have your productivity cards, your GTD managing projects, which is a CD set, ready for anything, a book that you've written, Getting Things Done, and I missed one. What's the last one?
Maybe my third book, Making It All Work.
Making It All Work. Was that the last one?
The Game of Life. I just rewrote I just created a revised edition of Getting Things Done.
Yes, so we have that right in front of us.
That was the last.
That's the
But
last.
prior to that, yes, it was making it all work, winning at the game of life, and the game of work, and the business of life.
Well, we have about a minute or so to go before we do a hard break for national news. When we come back, David, if you could discuss, one of the things that amazes me about you is if a large corporation, I won't use any names, but a large corporation, XYZ Corporation, wants to move its buildings and its phones and its people from Allentown to Philadelphia or California, and they would contact you and you would help, would you not?
Sure.
And maybe you can give us some highlights about how you do that, because that just blows my mind. How about you, Alan?
Absolutely.
We were chatting, David, about your transition from the U.S. and Santa Barbara to Amsterdam. Could you help us understand that transition?
Oh, lots of reasons. Kind of a perfect storm a little while ago. My wife and I don't have kids. My company has a great CEO that's managing the operational stuff, so it gives me more of the freedom to be more of a kind of global guy. I've known for years that GTD and my methodology was really global, so I'm kind of putting my money where my mouth is now and actually becoming. And we'd fall in love with the city, and Amsterdam truly is, in a way, a kind of center of the world right now, from my perspective, intellectually, scientifically, technologically, startup-wise. It's a very cool place. And also, a lot of my work is global. I'm doing keynotes all over the world, so it's kind of nice to be in a more central location. Santa Barbara is a lovely place, but it's a long way from everywhere.
Yes.
So, now I'm flying to Moscow and Dubai and Thailand and Oslo and Boston or whatever from here. And the Dutch are great, and we love it. We absolutely love the city and love the point of view here. It's so global and so, ecologically and, minded and smart. It's a great place. So it was a nice transition. It was time for a life change. So we just decided to, one of those things, every once in a while I walk off the end of the pier and hope the water's not too deep and shallow. So we just said, time to shift gears. And it's been very healthy for us to, shake it all up. I'll be 70 in a few months. So nice to keep sharp with, some, kind of creative changes like that.
Yes, and Catherine, your wife, I've been in contact with her through this whole process. She is just wonderful. She's been so nice to me and the staff, and I just wanted to thank her. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Well, she'll appreciate that.
And I think it's so neat, David, that, not that you're elderly by any means, but that, you're taking risks and making changes in your life and showing us all. That's a great role model for us to keep taking chances and changing it up a little bit.
Well, the universe is always on, so trying to rest your laurels and assuming that where you are in the status quo is cool. Yeah, I understand that. I'm Mr. Lazy, so I try to make things as easy as possible no matter where I am. But, somehow I think it's the creative nature of all of us that at some point when your head is clear, you're going to get inspired and throw yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think that's a great way to do it. I think that's why we're here.
Do you think it's easier to take risks if your mind is clear?
Well, you'll take bigger risks. So everybody is kind of at the edge of whatever risk you're ready to take. But we use a metaphor now called a surfboard. GTD is like a surfboard. It's great to be able to surf waves, but you need a good board to surf on. So GTD provides that surfboard. But good surfers, guess what you see tethered around their ankle? A little ankle tether. Mm-hmm. Why? Because when you're going to surf on, you're going to fall off that board. Trust me. But you want to be able to get back on the board again. So the more you trust your ankle tether and that you have a board, the bigger waves you'll surf. So if you catch the metaphor, if you have a way to get back in control and focused no matter what kind of change or surprise happens to you, you'll surf bigger waves. Mm-hmm. So what a clear head does, my head's, people say, gee, David, do you ever get unclear? Oh, multiple times a day. If you're not throwing yourself off this game at least 3 or 4 times a day, you may not be playing a big enough game. It's the most productive and creative and aspirational people that actually feel more overwhelmed and out of control because they're throwing themselves, there. It's just nice to have the tools that once you throw yourself out of control, pull up the rear guard, get that ankle tether on and get back on your next level of game. It will just give you more freedom to play at a bigger level of game.
And I like that metaphor so much because it kind of gives us permission to fail. And a lot of people fear that. But it's part of the process, isn't it? To succeed, you need
absolutely.
To fail.
Absolutely. You just need to make sure that you can pull yourself up once you jump off. Once it gets out of control, you need the tools to give it to you back. And that's why I think GTD is it's not going away. The world is more and more needing this kind of best practice kind of methodology to be able to then navigate in the world that is changing so fast and is so the inputs are crazy, the speed is crazy, the 24/7 always connected craziness is happening. But it only feels crazy. It's a great time to be alive if you know what you're doing and you have this methodology. If you don't, it can truly run you over.
That's for sure. Well, you're the pioneer. You know that old thing about getting arrows in your back if you're a pioneer? Have you found that out?
No, I hadn't heard that, but it's a fun image to play with. Yeah.
Well, tell us about a large organization calling David Allen up and saying, we need to move the whole 2 buildings and we don't know how to do it.
Well, first thing is who owns that project? I'm going to have to, because I'm not going to talk to somebody that can be undermined by somebody else who's going to do it. So I just need to do a good bit of discovery. So, okay, so who's dealing with this? Is this on cruise control? Yes or no? If it's not, then I know how to help facilitate getting it onto cruise control in terms of, okay, what do we need to do? I know the questions to ask, and we know how to be able to train people to be able to then facilitate and execute on the stuff that once it's decided. But the only reason you'd have an issue is because you don't trust the people are in the right places or making the right decisions, or that it's being appropriately executed on. And those are the things that this methodology trains coaches and teaches about. Depends on at what level. So I can deal with the executive vice president that may be in charge of this transition and this move, and he or she, this is going to make a huge difference for them if they spend 2 or 3 or 5 days with me or one of our senior coaches that will sit down with them and actually empty their head about that project and everything else in their life, and then be able to then help them manage and facilitate and make those kind of decisions to make it operational. And then if they've got 12 direct reports and 5 of those are critical for this project, then being able to train and coach them as well as the people that they may need to make sure that once things land in somebody's email in basket as a tasking project, that people actually make the right decisions about it and make it happen. So GTD is the execution methodology. That's a huge need out there these days. I mean, the vision is a dime a dozen, but being able to execute on it in a trusted way, that's rare and ripe, and that's what we do.
And tell me, David, how do you integrate mind mapping and things like Tony Buzan's and things like that? We have about 2 minutes before a hard break.
Well, there are appropriate times to be able to empty your head in a way where you don't have to decide what to do about it. So, Tony's work is fabulous. I've met Tony and spent years working with mind mapping and things like that. It's very appropriate in the appropriate time and place. It's not willy-free. People want to go in and brainstorm together and mind map, but if you're not clear about your purpose or what your intended successful outcome is, you still want to shoot each other even if you try to mind map together. But it is a fabulous process to be able to open you up to then get whatever is on your mind out of your mind and get it objectified, get it out of your head. And mind mapping in Tony's work has been brilliant about that, very demonstrably so. There's a very appropriate place for that. And the ability to sort of relax about whatever's in your head and not resist it, not judge it, not criticize it. There comes a time when you need to do that, but you need to be able to generate the data and the potential stuff. As Linus Pauling said, look, the best way to have a good idea is get a lot of ideas, and then harvest the good ones. So that process in and of itself, you can't fault. That's brilliant. Yeah. And it very much is involved in what we do.
Well, that's incredible. Let me ask you a quick question, David, please. Your GTD templates, they're in plastic coated. It is the most unbelievable set of templates I've ever seen. You could run your whole business, your whole life just off of these templates. Tell me just a few minutes about this product. I think it's great.
Well, essentially it's the boiled down version of what it took me 30 years to really uncover about the best practices, about truly how you get things done, how you keep your head clear. Thanks, Russ. I have to say, wow, you're a smart guy that you caught how actually powerful this stuff is. People see these little plastic templates, these little, admonitions and so forth. And those are all great, but believe me, there's millions of miles on the tires of what came up with what you read there on those templates. Anybody who has ears to hear, eyes to see, if you read them closely, and if you actually begin to follow those things, they're not hard. And it's not like a foreign language or some new technology that you have to understand. It's stuff everybody that in a way understands and is actually doing in some way. I've just made them much more explicit and conscious than the implicit stuff that people do. See, Russ and Alex, I didn't spend all these years actually figuring out something new. What I did was unfold and uncover what it is that we really do that really works and come up with the basic underlying principles that are at play there, and then play those back in terms of, okay, if you understand the principle, then here's some techniques that will then apply those principles and make it work in more elegant and expansive ways.
And what's great about that is that a lot of times, like you say, it's in our subconscious mind. We kind of do it without thinking about it. But when it's brought to our conscious mind, can't go back. It's there now, and you're going to do it differently from now on.
Yeah, there's a strange paradox about this. I mean, this is, as I say, this is not like running with scissors. I mean, come on, you can implement any of this stuff, even just the 2-minute rule, and it will change your life. These are valuable things that we've uncovered over all these years of working with. I've had the luxury to work with the best and brightest and busiest people on the planet and sit desk side with them for thousands of hours, quite literally. So all this stuff has been honed in the fires of the people and organizations that would probably the most challenging places to make this work. And because this stuff went viral inside of those environments, that's what gave me the confidence to actually write the book, Getting Things Done. I said, okay, let me write the manual in case I get run over by a bus. Seems like nobody else figured this out that way. But you can literally pick up that book, and if you have the directionality and rigor and interest to implement it, it's all there.
It is. The templates are a productivity breakthrough as far as I'm concerned.
Nice to hear it. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Tell us about, this is our last segment. I know you were going to touch on focus and how important focus is with GTD.
From my experience, the whole essence of creative and a productive life is your ability to manage your focus. I think that's what we're here to do. I think that's why we incarnate on the planet. I think that's what we're learning. It's like, how do you choose? Where do you want to put your attention? So managing your attention is really critical. One of the things we know now, and it's been validated scientifically, is that you won't see how to do it until you see yourself doing it. That's how you catch a ball, is you see yourself catching the ball, and then you put together all kinds of complicated, intricate stuff to then make you actually able to catch the ball. So the ability to be able to see something happening before you know how to do it, it's sort of the skill or the uniqueness of a visionary. You know, how do I have a picture in my mind of something I want to have, do, or experience before I know how to do it, and give myself permission to start to identify with that to make it happen? I mean, that's how I've created my life. That's how I wrote all the books. The first thing I wrote when I wrote Getting Things Done were the reviews, because I know how this works. I ran across this information in 1980, 1981 about how powerful visualization and affirmations were. So my whole life got created by sitting down and drawing out pictures of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to experience, how I wanted to be. So the power of that is incredible. But this is not some woo-woo California thing. This is very practical and very real. It's very subtle and sublime, but it is actually something you can get your hands on. It's something, again, we all do. The way you get out of a room is you see yourself out of the room and then you see how to get there. So this is another one of those things. We're all doing this all the time, because most people are not that conscious of how this works. But it works negatively as well as positively. If you go into a meeting and go, oh, God, another crappy meeting, then your brain says, oh, you want to see how crappy a meeting this is? Watch. And then you'll see everything that'll justify why you shouldn't be in the room. If you walk in and say, I'm going to find out very quickly why I'm in the meeting and how I can, contribute to it, you'll produce a very different experience. Same meeting, same people there. But the focus you have in your mind before you walk in there is going to make a huge difference. So the practicality and the reality of that is something that's actually, it kind of underlies the whole GTD process. It's really all about freeing up your head so that you can focus the way you want to focus appropriately and not be distracted about doing that.
Oh, I think that is just brilliant. Do you guys agree?
Absolutely.
It's just brilliant stuff. To our listeners, you have to go out and Getting Things Done, all of David's products, ready for anything. We're just continuing. I just had to mention that. Go ahead, David. Tell us anything we haven't gone over, anything you'd like to continue with.
No, that's it. Just search for our website, gettingthingsdone.com. And by the way, if you're listening to this from any other places in the world, we're in a process. Big project now for me is to get this global. So we now are officially in about 40 to 50 countries where we have exclusive franchisees. And I've been working to develop a global training program, developing this material to get it around the world. So our mission is to get this information out to as many people on the planet as can use it, because quite frankly, this planet can use this. So, but we're not trying to force it on anybody or proselytize. We just want to make it available. There are a lot of people that don't know about this. So to me, that's a big thing. So if you want to see franchisees in all the different parts of the world, you can go to our website. You can find it there. Any of this at any level, people can play. There's very easy ways to enter into this game and get involved.
Now, we had a question from someone who is wondering if there's a kid's version of GTD.
Well, believe it or not, the next book out, I'm co-authoring with my CEO and a teacher from Minneapolis. We're writing the GTD for the next generation, basically for high school age kids. Because guess what? As soon as you graduate from high school, guess what you lose? Mom as your trusted system.
Yes.
Right. Being able to teach kids how to handle this. And we've already now got very good data from kids, even 8, 9, 10 years old, that are learning how to clean up their backpack every week, to decide what are the things I need to catch up on in terms of my homework, and then give myself the room to be creative and to work on creative projects, surf the web, and figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. So they're learning the weekly review at age 8, 9, and 10, and we can show you that in real time. So I hear you. I've heard for years, oh my God, the kids need to learn this. I wish I'd have learned this before I was in my 30s and 40s. And kids 5, 6, 7 years old can understand the idea, well, how would we like summer to be? And, well, what do you think the next step is we need to take? And so these are thought processes that can be trained as early as kids can make decisions. And they really need to now. The high school kids and even junior high school kids or middle school kids are as buried as many of us are.
Yes, that's true.
And David, that question came from our producer, Robert, who's another brilliant part of this whole team. And just a quick mention, would you come back when that book is written and tell our audience?
No promises. No promises. You guys know about books and authors and deadlines.
We would take you any time on the show, just in case.
Sure. Well, just stay in touch. It'll be promoted out there when it's going to happen.
Sure, we will. What do we have about?
We have about a minute, but I wanted to ask you very quickly. In your book, you say bright people procrastinate more. Can you touch on that very quickly?
Because bright people and smart, sensitive, creative people can produce the biggest horrifying demons in their minds quicker than anybody about how awful something will be if it's not perfect. So they just blow a fuse. It's the dumb, insensitive people that just start moving on things because they're not aware of how many things they could screw up. So it's a strange process.
Thank you so much for being here.
David, thank you. Stay on the line after this. We want to say thank you.
Sure.
This is Russ on the Radio. You're listening to Independent Talk 1100 KFNX. Today, we were inspired and motivated by David Allen, the world's leading authority in developing personal and organizational capacity. And I do mean capacity. And remember, nothing really begins to happen until something is created. Thanks to David Allen.